It didn't take long for the young Reiner to realize he wanted to be just like Dad.
I was about 8 years old. I said, Dad, I want to change my name. And he got all upset. He was worried that it was difficult for me, that he didn't want, maybe I was feeling the burden of having to be his son. This room over here is what we call the ego room.
At his house, there's a small room crammed with points of pride from his life in entertainment.
Reiner's study is full of mementos from a career that would make any father proud, not to mention a mother. Reiner gave his a star turn in Meg Ryan's famous deli scene.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
In When Harry Met Sally.
A critical piece of evidence in this case has not been found. The murder weapon. Nick was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. A month before the murders, doctors changed the meds Nick was taking, and it messed Nick up.
Any evidence, if there is any, of mental illness for his background will be coming out in the hearings that will occur.
Reiner remains in a downtown jail where he's being held without bail.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
It's Thanksgiving 8 years ago. Nick is seated next to his famous celebrity father, Rob. A total of about 20 people are all sat around the table. One by one, as they passed the turkey around, each person expressed what they were grateful for. Then it was Nick's turn. According to the Washington Post, he said, "Well, I'm certainly not grateful for this fucking food, and I'm not grateful for any of you freeloaders in my house. I just can't wait to get through this fucking dinner so I can get back to my room." Nick yelled this, according to a dinner guest. Then he threw the turkey leg at his father's plate. What did his father do? Rob smiled and picked up the leg, and then he said, "Well, that's really easy to follow. Thanks, Nick."
Oh, hold on 1 second.
"I'm not grateful for any of you freeloaders in my house." I mean, just look at those words. Is it just me, or does Nick suffer from a serious lack of self-awareness? You might say he was deliberately trying to be ironic, or that he was being a comedian, a bad comedian, except he's yelling and he throws the turkey at his father. And maddeningly, his father seems to take this abuse from his son in his stride. If there's any doubt about just how bad druggy Nick's bedside manner actually was, the Washington Post provides example after example after example. And how did they cobble together the fabric of Nick's backstory? Well, with a lot of effort. According to the Post, interviews with 14 individuals who knew Nick, as well as interviews he gave to an addiction podcast from 2016 to 2018, that's the Dopey podcast. These all paint a portrait of a complicated young man struggling to find his footing in the world and failing. The son of one of the most celebrated filmmakers in Hollywood, Nick viewed himself as a black sheep in his family, well, I think accurately. And he was often consumed by feelings of inadequacy. Well, if you're going to act like a horse's ass, well, then you are going to feel inadequate because you are inadequate. And then he would have occasional bursts of temper or violence that usually coincided with drug use. Well, what did you think was going to happen? His parents committed endless resources toward his recovery, sending him to treatment centers where most of his peers told the Post he was goofy and well-liked. But after each rehab stint, he would return to treating his addictions casually, even when they led him to despondence and destitution. Now, Nick Reiner's classmates at school included the sons of Robert Downey Jr. and Bill Pullman. But he made a lifelong friend with John DiCarlo. DiCarlo last saw Reiner in person 6 years ago in 2020. After Rob and Michelle were killed and his friend was arrested, DiCarlo checked his Facebook messages for the first time in a while, and he saw that Reiner had actually been asking to hang out and reconnect. You kind of get a sense that Nick Reiner had sort of run out of friends and he wanted to reconnect with his sort of friend in drug adventures, and unfortunately for Nick anyway, this friend was unavailable. He said, regretfully, it seemed like he'd been reaching out to me kind of a bit over the last couple of months, so repeatedly over a period of months. And then there was just no answer. And he said, I'd just been dealing with my own thing, so a lot of the messages went unresponded to on my end. And Nick may have seen that as a rejection, as a deliberate snub, one of a host that he'd experienced in his life. Now, according to DiCarlo, Nick was average, neither here nor there, in the sense that he was neither super popular nor a loner at school. He said on the final day of 8th grade, not having been invited to any end-of-year gatherings, Nick and DiCarlo decided to smoke marijuana. It was Nick's first time trying pot, according to DiCarlo. Now you can see what is happening. Finding himself at a loose end. Remember, this isn't just not being invited to end-of-year gatherings, it's Rob Reiner's son that is being snubbed, which is a kind of major bummer. It's like, who do I have to be to get any credit? Well, more than just the son and a jerk, of somebody. And so what does Nick do? He tries pot to feel better, and it's a decision that seems to change his entire life, and it reshapes his entire life for the worse. Trying to feel better ends up making things so much worse. In this analysis, I'm not going to take you through all the anecdotes, all the stints in rehab. Do you know why? Not only do I find it boring as shit and predictable as hell, but I'm simply not interested in that sort of tawdry, empty, dull, meaningless narrative. It's not even a narrative. It's a series of chemically induced mood swings that literally mean nothing. So I'm not going to, it's just a waste of time. It's a waste of someone's life, and who wants to waste your life going through it? So I'm not going to talk about Visions, the substance abuse center in Malibu, or Summit in Montana, or Second Nature in Utah, or Alina Lodge, aka Last Chance Ranch in New Jersey. I think that's where he threw the rock through the window. I'm not going to talk about what happened at Burning Tree Ranch in Texas. I'm not going to give you a blow-by-blow of all the colorful rainbows Nick tripped through while he was on pot or Percocet, heroin, or prescription drugs like Adderall or Clonopin. Some of you might find stories about degenerates interesting, like watching a slow-motion car crash or watching endless loops of various shootings going on right now in Minneapolis. I don't, though. But I will share this one story. And I'm not sure if this is Nick's rock bottom. It's hard to imagine his alleged murder of his parents isn't more rock bottom, basically the most rock bottom he's ever going to be. But anyway, let's go to a homeless shelter in Maine, circa, well, I have actually no idea exactly when. According to the Post, Nick had befriended an unhoused man who taught him to shoot crack in a McDonald's restroom and inject Wellbutrin intravenously. And I think when you're thinking about this idea of befriending an unhoused man and being in a sort of homeless shelter environment, you must also ask yourself, where was Nick actually found when he was arrested? Well, just familiar territory, isn't it? Territory that he'd been in before. And what was he doing when he was in that sort of territory? And, this was generally what happened at rehab as well. Instead of becoming weaned off drugs, because of the type of person Nick was, what he did at rehab was he found out how to use drugs that he hadn't used yet. He spoke to drug addicts, and he would get information from them, which he would then use to further his drug addiction adventure. And so once he left rehab, he would try something worse, and ergo his problems with addiction just worsened. But think about just how selfish that is. So much money being spent on him, and all he can think of are his options and alternatives to get better highs. But let's go back to that McDonald's in Maine. After shooting up, Nick told the homeless man that his father had once starred in All in the Family. The homeless dude didn't believe him, so Nick took out his ID. The homeless dude was like, Rob Reiner's son would not be under a birch tree shooting Wellbutrin, except he was that stupid. Nick would often seek out his father during his darkest moments, according to the Post research. On another episode of Dopey, he recalled once taking acid at his parents' home. "Calm down, buddy, it's okay," Nick's father Rob told him at the time. "I used to do this in the 60s. You come down eventually." And so I think Rob's own drug use made him think Nick's was manageable or just a phase. Oh dear, just how wrong he was. After being Charlie, Nick took another stab at getting another project off the ground, once again trying to ride the coattails heavily of the family legacy. In 2017, Nick began working on a documentary about his famous grandfather Carl Reiner, but a little over a year after Being Charlie was released, Nick relapsed. That was the same year that Nick wrecked the guest house. Nick said on the Dopey podcast that he got totally spun out on uppers and cocaine and stayed up for days in a row, and that was when he wrecked his parents' guest house. So what was it that Nick wanted? Well, isn't it obvious? To have his cake and eat it. According to the Post, what he wanted was, Nick's ideal situation, and this is according to DeCarlo, was he wanted a life as a functional addict. I think that's what he really wanted. Like, maybe one day, once I'm old enough, my parents are going to just step aside and realize that I can do drugs and it's not going to destroy me. And if they didn't step aside, wouldn't he make them? And wouldn't the drugs eventually destroy him and them? DeCarlo also provides some fascinating insight into Nick's inner world, and let's just call it Nick's obvious hypocrisy. He says, because as much as Nick wanted to escape his parents' rules, he needed his security blanket of living in a comfortable house where he could make a mess or leave dirty dishes out and not have to make his bed because someone else would take care of it, DeCarlo said. Now think about the mess he's made by allegedly committing these crimes. The leaving of these dirty dishes in terms of the bloodbath he left. Who's going to clean that up? The answer is no one. And I think that is going to be the wake-up call of wake-up calls. You know, at the same time that Nick was moaning about his comfort zone, he absolutely clung to it. In an ideal world, and I suppose this emerged over time, what Nick really wanted was the comfort zone his parents offered him, just minus his parents. According to the Post, signs eventually emerged that Nick was using again. He would run to the gate to get deliveries for things that clearly weren't food, or suddenly it would start smelling like Febreze in the billiard room. That's according to a family friend. His behavior became more volatile, screaming, yelling, cursing, throwing things, to the point where an employee who had worked in the home for 20 years threatened to quit because he was genuinely scared of Nick, this person said. And maybe they were right. Maybe they were seeing the signs. Now, what are we dealing with here? Is this mental illness or the meat and potatoes of drug addicts? Absolutely what you would expect from someone doing this over time. Because aren't drug addicts because they can't and won't control themselves, and they give up at the slightest sign that things are becoming difficult or requiring discipline? Nietzsche once said, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger." And I think that is a terrible sentiment when it comes to drug addiction. And what's more, I don't think drug addicts do become stronger over time. I think they become more and more pathetic. In Nick's case, the aphorism should probably go, "That which doesn't kill us may kill or seriously wound someone else, but there will be casualties." And a lot of money is going to be flushed down the toilet while this is happening. And when there are casualties, none of it should come as a surprise, because it's been coming forever. There's been an abundance of signals, an abundance of signs.
What should I do? Give me a signal. I need your guidance, Lord. Please send me a sign. Oh, what's this joker doing now?
And it makes you think, did Rob eventually smell the coffee? Did Rob read the tea leaves about his son before the fateful incident? He was naive, someone said. I think it was Mel Brooks. But he was also perceptive. According to the Post, one morning, a friend sat with Rob drinking coffee before the rest of the house awoke. "It's like a mansion prison," Rob said. "If I knew it would be this bad with one kid, I wouldn't have had any." Certainly food for thought. Well, I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening. Look out for my next video on the Ramsey case, where we'll be looking at the peripheral figure of John Fernie. And I'll see you guys next time.